Hi there. Thanks for coming back. Hope you've found some value in the this channel. So today I want to add some more stuff. I reviewed the video yesterday on defensiveness, and I wanted to add a few more things to it because it's a big topic, and I've been trying to get my head completely around it and understand it. And it's a very deep topic. There's a lot of things behind why people are defensive, and so I want to get into that. Um, as I mentioned, I met this beautiful woman and who was really defensive, and I'd never experienced it before, and I didn't understand what she was going through. And in all honesty, if I knew what I knew now, I would have handled things way differently. And this is why I'm sharing this. So if you run into somebody in your life or you're defensive yourself, you'll have a better understanding of what causes it, because it's something that if you don't understand, you're probably going to make lots of mistakes in dealing with someone who is defensive. First of all, it's not their fault. It's not a character trait that they chose. It's a defensive mechanism that they picked up as a result of growing up in a chaotic life. Basically, they were born into a world that was not safe. And so, as we would I mentioned yesterday, how we normally develop is we would have a sense of self and a sense of safety in our environment, and we wouldn't be full of anxiety. And whereas somebody who grew up in chaos, that's not what happened to them, and they were born into a situation where the world was not safe, and they were born into anxiety, into there's something really wrong here. And some people are born into maybe I'm not wanted, or they get an idea that they shouldn't have been born, or all kinds of things, and it's a result of being born into chaos. And what happens is it affects how their brain was developed. Whereas most people, if they were born into safety, their brain would be more relaxed. You spend most of your time in your prefrontal cortex and things like that. My experience of what I found was that people who are born into chaos and were born into a situation where the main part of their brain was based in survival, which is the reptilian part of our brain, which has kept humanity going for hundreds of thousands of years. And so they're into this attack mode, or I'm going to be attacked. And they really lack the feeling of safety that most people have. And so for me, I compounded on the issue. I failed miserably in the first years of the relationship. And I didn't understand what this beautiful woman was going through. And I didn't understand what was more so what was going through internally for her, and how it was affecting her self-confidence and her ability just to say her truth. And we would get into discussions and they would never complete. We could never complete a discussion because I think at some level she just didn't feel safe. And part of that, a good chunk of that, was my lack of understanding and my ignorance. And if I understood again what I understand now, that I would have handled situations different, because these beautiful people, and I know it's hard when you meet somebody who's defensive and they're lashing out and all this other things. It's hard to see them because a lot of times it triggers our own self defenses. So it's hard to remember that this is just a wounded little kid. And I'll do some more videos on the effects of bad parenting, but this one's really focused on defensiveness and how you can help. And so when I started doing research, I read this article by this woman, and it was titled "How to Have a Functional, Trusting, Relaxed, Mutually Satisfying Human Relationship with Somebody Who's Defensive." Their response was, shorter answer, you can't, because they're going to go into defensive modes. There's two reasons. One is the defensive, but there's also, because they're so busy on survival, a lot of times they miss a lot of things, which I'll talk about in a second. So here's what this says. And the long answer, you really can't. Don't even try to get into a relationship with somebody who's defensive. The reason one can't look to defensive people for top quality relationships is such relationships requires two human beings. But defensive people don't think like humans. They think like reptiles. I mean this literally. Beneath the elaborate neural structures that mediate our subtle social interactions, we possess what scientists call a reptilian brain. The ancient biological structure, which evolves in reptiles, isn't capable of nuanced emotion or logical thought. Its primary driving force is fear. And their response is, if you meet somebody who's defensive, get out, and you're not going to be able to have a quality relationship. And I have mixed feelings about that. And it really depends on the consciousness of the person. And part of the problem with us humans is, especially now, as our attention spans have deteriorated to nothing based on the internet, is that most people don't know much about themselves. They know more about their car or which clothes to buy than they know is, hey, why do I do this? Like, what's really going on inside of me that made me respond this way? And some of the stuff that we do is really weird. Not weird, but so understand that in your life, you're going to get wounded. And those wounds don't just fade away, especially if they're really severe. They're in the back of your mind, and we're designed for survival. And so if we have events that we really don't feel safe, they especially are restored in our neurology. And so your brain is constantly on, am I going to be alive? Am I going to be safe? Am I going to be taken care of? And so it's always looking for events. And if it finds something that reminds of a traumatic event way in the past, bang, that dramatic event comes, and that laps over the decision-making process and the emotional response. And so if you grew up in an environment where it wasn't safe due to the key people, the parents especially, were not available, they weren't around, then you're going to be on top alert all the time for abandonment, for situations that don't feel safe, that people might you might feel rejected, or people have the potential to reject you. So it's going to impede your self-confidence. It's going to undermine everything you do in your life, because it's going to really mess with your the success, the things you want to do, because it's going to take away your confidence. And what happened in our relationship was that my beautiful friend found it really hard to tell her truth, to say, I want this, I want this, I want this. And I didn't get it. Like, I had no experience with defensiveness and how to deal with it. And I didn't understand what she was going through. And it took a bunch of series of events before all of a sudden I went, wait a minute, there's more to this. And so that's when I started reading and reading and reading. And again, I'll say this, as I said in the other video, if you meet somebody who's defensive, it's because you're dealing with a wounded kid. And where we get out of rage and where we get upset, it's always because we triggered some old wound from our past. And unfortunately, in our society, most people look for somebody to blame. And even when you deal with defensiveness, first of all, it's going to trigger something in you, and you're going to have to go, well, gee, why am I upset? And then the other thing is, then if you can get to your own stuff and get through your own stuff, then you start to look at the other person. Hey, this person's wounded, and they've gone through something traumatic. And this is why I'm really strong believe that if you meet somebody defensive, they probably more than a lot of people need compassion, and because they've been traumatized as children, and they've had people who should have been loving them and caring for them in so much chaos that they've neglected their children. They've neglected their children. And unfortunately, it has its side effects. And someone I just talked to you about, the inability to have affects your self-confidence. It affects your ability just to say, hey, listen, this is truthful for me today. Can we just sit down and talk about it, which most people would do. And so for people who are defensive, it's not a natural response. And this person in this article also said, and he was talking about reptile brains. And sadly, however, reptiles are blind to non-defensive emotions, to the glow of love, the tickle of amusement. And, you know, I think there's truth to that. I think that I know with my friend, like I was always trying to do stuff to help her. And I always felt like she just didn't notice. Like it just wasn't part of it. So the article again says, don't bother trying. And I think it really comes down to the consciousness of the person. And that brings up a doppelbind. Hopefully, if you find somebody defensive and you care about them, they're already starting to do self-searching. They know something's wrong. And so they're looking for, why am I responding like this? But you have the double bind is that a lot of times, like if you want to sit down and have a normal discussion with people, you just say, hey, listen, I'm upset with this. And they go, oh, gee, you're right. I could have done that better. But with defensive people, that's really hard for them to do because they go, oh, I'm being attacked, and they go into survival mode. And so what I found for myself was it was hard to be able to sit down and work through really deep issues because of that defensiveness. So if you find somebody, you've got to find a way of making them feel safe. Honey, I really love you. Honey, everything's fine. I just would like to talk about this issue. And then find out if that worked for them. And like you really got to try to open yourself to saying, what can I do to help you to feel safe in this moment so we can work through this issue? And I want you to know, if you ever need to come and talk about something, that you mean so much to me and that I will do anything to try to help. And you may get that they may have a hard time hearing that. And my experience many times was I would say something from a loving place and it would be misinterpreted. And next thing you know, they would fly off the handle maybe fly off the handle is not the right word. They'd get upset. And a lot of times I was on the receiving end of that. And you just got to do what you can to really love these people, because they really need your love and your affection. And if they're going into the people who are defensive, you got to realize you're being controlled by the reptilian part of your brain, and it's not your fault. And it's not, I'm going to say it's 1,000 times, it's not your fault. It's because you had people that parented you really poorly and that should have been loving you and holding you and saying, you're an amazing little kid and I love you so much and it's safe and the world is safe. You grew up in an environment that wasn't safe, and that's affected you at a very deep level. I tell my friend over and over, said, here's what your affirmation's got to be. The world is safe and I am safe. And tell yourself 1,000 times, the world is safe and I am safe. And rewire your neurology that's been improperly wired. The world is safe and I am safe. And make that your mantra all day. The world is safe and I am safe. The world, especially if you have something you need to deal with, that's going to be the conversation you're uncomfortable with, just the world is safe and I am safe. The world is safe and I am safe, because you are. And the feeling you have is something that you picked up by accident. It was a decision made by a baby or a small child that was made in error. It was made based on their environment, and it was ingrained into your neurology. You need to unwind that. You need to unwire that. And on a slightly different note, for the rest of us, if we react to somebody who's defensive, that's our stuff. And one of the things that we stumbled on was this wonderful, incredible course by this guy, Dieter Walsack, called Choose Again. Look online for a video called Who Do You Think You Are by Gabor Mate and Dietrich Walsack, and watch that. Dietrich, through 20 years, came up with this amazing program called Choose Again. And it's really simple. If I'm upset, it's about me. So I'm upset, it's about me. It's not about today. It's about something from the past. And let that past lead you to what's really holding you back in life, and work your way through it. And you'll find that if you start picking away at some of the crap where you get triggered, your life's going to improve dramatically. So there was a great saying somebody sent me that said, if I look after my, the smart man looks after his own ego. The the stupid man tries to look after the ego of 1,000 other people, and it's never about anybody else than ourselves. So I hope this adds a little bit of more clarity from my other video. You know, we're all doing the best we can. We need to parent our kids better, and we need to love ourselves and love other people. And there's a lot of people that really need a lot of love, especially people that have been wounded badly as children, which is a lot of people. I think behind this is, if you watch Gaber Mate's stuff, is behind all addictions is pain of some sort. It's some kind of usually childhood wounding from some form of abuse, and people just compensate with it by layering on other things to avoid pain. Alcoholism, drug addictions, pornography, all this other stuff. It's just, hey, I want to avoid what I'm feeling. Where the road to freedom is we're going, I'm upset. It's about me. What's really going on for me? Anyways, I hope this video adds some more clarity. And if you know somebody that's defensive, just know it's a wounded little kid. Love them dearly, and if you can, if they let you, hold them in the arms and say, oh, everything's okay, and you'll be all right. Anyways, I hope, again, thank you for watching. Please leave some comments, because I'd love to hear some feedback as to what you think and if this has been useful. Take care and have a great day.